Hi, this is Steve, and I want to welcome you back to another episode of Tech Leader Talk. Are you looking for some tips and insights to grow your tech startup and obtain funding? Well, that's what we're discussing today. So, today I'm talking with Don Weidner, who's the founder of Formidable Ventures, which is an investment business built on exponential technologies and aggressive growth. Don talks about the different types of companies that he invests in and the types of factors that he looks at and evaluates when considering a tech company for possible investment. During our discussion, Don shares information about what he looks for in a leadership team and what makes a pitch deck stand out. Don also shares his thoughts on what he expects to see in the investment area in the coming year. And I'm sure that you're going to get some valuable tips and insights that can help you grow and fund your tech company. So here's my discussion with Don. Hi, Don. Thanks for joining me on the call today.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me.
So my favorite first question is to get just a little bit of kind of your background. How did you get involved in the tech world and some of the work that you do with space technology? What did that journey look like to get you to where you're at today?
Yeah, thank you. I had a indirect journey, I suppose. I after grad school, I knew I wanted tech, and I studied companies. All of my studies were about business models for tech companies. I got immediately hired by Intel, and then Hitachi and IBM, and just thrived in the fast-paced technical setting. Worked with engineering teams and learned a lot about supply chain. And then in the evenings, though, I'd study the stock market and how to invest. So I'd work 10 to 12 hours a day for the Fortune 500, and then do my own research at night. How can I amplify my earnings? How can I make money off what's really going on out there? And I started doing so well at stock investments and things that I quit my full-time job and started my own investment business. And that was about 15 years ago. And I started investing primarily for myself, but then took on other investors and took it as kind of a challenge to study industries that excited me and invest early.
Okay, interesting. So how did you, let's say, find or start kind of getting involved in the space industry as part of your activity? I know you're in other tech areas too, but for space, what drew you to that area?
The single thing that drew me to space was a meeting with Peter Diamandis, founder of X Prize and Singularity University. He approached me and said, "Hey, I'm starting a space company in the Redmond, Washington area. Do you want to see it? Do you want to meet the team?" And so I had the opportunity to meet with him and Chris Lewicki and Joe Lannon, a lot of these early people involved in planetary resources, and it was immediately drawn to it and became a friends and family investor in the business, and just went from there. I guess got so excited about the opportunities there that I looked for other avenues, and then I discovered Space Angels as well, which is a space focused angel group.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'm a fan of Peter Diamandis. Also read all his books and follow a lot of things. He's a big thinker and has some great ideas and a lot of great things going on.
Yeah, he's an eternal optimist, and he's he got great books, really good books.
So there's all kinds of things going on in the space industry. It's growing quickly and very different than when I was a kid. It was just Apollo, and it was pretty much just NASA and the Russian activities. What's most exciting to you, or what do you think is the most exciting part of what's happening in space and maybe what's coming in the next couple of years?
There is a ton going on. It's very difficult to keep up. So SpaceX's Starship is thrilling, and we're, as you know, we're on the cusp of it right now. They'll be testing in the next week or so their first integrated orbital launch. And I think what that brings as far as power and reach out into space, and then of course the goal of the reduced cost per kilogram for payloads, I think is thrilling. And then Artemis is a big thing in the news, and I think what's exciting about that is that it's making the general public excited about space again. Because I went to a space shuttle launch when I was a kid, and I remember speaking in front of my, I don't know, sixth grade class, and I mean, people were thrilled about it. And but lately, I mean, here I am in my 50s, and if I bring up space at a business dinner, people are still thinking, space, you mean outer space? Like it's not on the tip of the tongue like it used to be. And I think some big general global activity like Artemis helps kind of pull everyone together again in the excitement of space.
Yeah. Like it did in the past with Apollo and with the shuttle and everything else, kind of some a national thing to kind of rally around a little bit.
That's right.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier you do different types of investments in companies. What kind of company do you look for? What's your ideal candidate for consideration for funding?
So I do look at both space and non-space. I always look for cutting edge technology. I only invest in tech, and some of that is probably attributed to Peter Diamandis as well. He really got me excited about the exponential technology idea, where technology builds on technology, and you can double your efficiencies or double computer speeds, all these sorts of things. And tech is really the only thing that can do that, and has done that for decades. So my personal favorites are autonomous vehicles, solar power, robotics, and then space.
Okay. Interesting. What are there particular factors you look at? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, and don't give away the secrets, but when you're looking at a particular company for possible investment, what are some of the key things that are important to you?
So I pick the industry first, and then I pick the leader in that industry, as far as I can tell, right? But I do all my own research. I do deep study. Once I decide that I like an industry, I'll pull it apart. I'll learn it. I may know nothing about AI, but I'm going to learn about AI, and I'm going to take an MIT class on it, and then I'm going to find out who the leaders are, and who's closest to revenue, perhaps, or who's got the best management team. So I really rip apart an industry and get my hands dirty in it, and try to choose the leaders.
Okay. What stands out to you as in leadership? What would you love to see on a leadership team that would make you confident?
Well, that's a great question. I love that question because I'm an MBA. I'm not an engineer, but I've always worked with engineering teams. And in my experience, engineers generally hire other engineers. But whether it's a space company or an AI company, they all have issues with supply chain. They all have issues with vendor management, with cash flow. And so I love a talented engineering team, of course, but I like a talented business team along with it. And sometimes that's not always there. So yeah, a good combination of the two, I think, make the strongest companies.
Okay. Then how do you, I assume if there's some holes or gaps or something in the leadership, or it just needs to be strengthened or whatever, how do you bring kind of your experience and your learnings from other companies and your work experience to help that company, help that leadership team get stronger?
I've directly approached that with a few different companies, and I'll get exactly one of two answers. Again, there is a mind that all we need is the best engineers, and everything else will fall into place. But then I've also had plenty of replies where, oh my gosh, you're right. We don't know how to do that. Or a great example is a lot of young space companies think they need to be vertically integrated. They need to build all of their own custom parts and CAD draw everything we need, and somehow we're going to figure out how to build it all. When in fact, there's a lot already being built out there, and you can do it cheaper and faster if you're finding the right vendors or supply chain. So, and there's generally an aha moment there for some of these companies that, oh, you're right, we should be negotiating or spending more time looking outside of our bubble.
Don't have to do it all ourselves. I've interviewed quite a few other recently space tech leaders, and on the tech side, rarely are they saying, we're A to Z, we're doing the entire project, every piece of it. I was talking to one working on the next iterations of lunar rovers, and as best I can figure, there's at least 8 or 10 different companies involved in the different pieces. It's a complex machine, but there's no one company that's designing the whole thing, because they'll go to other people for their expertise, especially to make things like that work in the space environment, which is a little difficult.
That's right, for sure.
So are companies open to that when you say, look, let me help you find other vendors, or just take a little bit different approach? You said some are open to it. What about ones maybe that aren't, and they're like kind of adamant that's like, no, we do all this ourselves. We're engineers, we're smart. Everything's invented in-house. How do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, so SpaceX, of course, is vertically integrated, but they have the deep pockets and the experience to do that. But I don't know. I mean, that can be a roadblock to investing for me, potentially. Sure. It can be very expensive to do everything yourself, and slower. So yeah, generally I prefer the more balanced company.
Okay. It seems like, to me, it'd be more of it's a teamwork. I mean, you become part of their team, but also they open themselves up to get the best advice from whoever and wherever it's coming.
That's right. And again, the whole industry is evolving rapidly. So I think you have to be open-minded. You have to get beyond your hubris and realize others are doing very smart things as well, and keep an eye out for all of that.
Right. Okay. So are there, with all these different activities and types of technology going on, at least in the space world, are there some technologies that you're either most interested in or you think are the most promising for the next few years?
Yes, let's see. Again, there's so much. Launch was the most exciting for me initially. That seemed to be the biggest bottleneck 5 to 10 years ago. But now that there's more companies churning out more ideas and more products, I think like integration of satellites is a very exciting thing where, again, it used to just be pretty proprietary, right? My satellite did one thing and it didn't talk to anyone else, and you could never repair it, you could never refuel it. And I think it's very exciting that we're heading toward a time where we'll be able to more remotely steer or repair or refuel or deorbit satellites as needed. I think that's very exciting. And then the step beyond that in space manufacturing, I think is thrilling. And again, being a supply chain guy, I can't wait to see the materials being mined from space, the 3D printing, the things like that happening once there's a bit more of a cohesive environment going on.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. One of the guests that'll be coming up on the podcast shortly is, well, you'll have already been published by the time this is published. But he was talking about, solving two problems at once. One is getting all this debris, lots of debris that's up there. And a lot of it, some of the metal and things can be melted down then and used as propellants and other things. So we don't have to deorbit the piece of junk. And we also don't have to spend money to launch more of these materials up into space. It's up there. It'll be, like you said, kind of like a supply chain in orbit. So that's a different way to think of things.
Yeah, that'll be life changing once we're able to use the resources that are already there,
Yeah.
because of course launch is so expensive.
Yeah. So a lot of startups can start in a garage and kind of inexpensively, if it's software or certain things like that, or and can prototype. Most space stuff isn't like that. It takes a lot more money to get started. How, since it's a longer process, maybe for some of these companies to become profitable or to have some kind of an exit, how do you look at that, and how do you figure out how you're going to manage that longer window before it starts generating some kind of return?
That is difficult. Yeah, space is expensive, and you really have to look at timing, at cash flow and cash burn, right? Um, how near is the customer? How near is your cash flow, and where does your timing fit into what else is going on in the space ecosystem? Planetary Resources I referred to before is a great example. It was an excellent company with excellent people, and it didn't succeed. But in hindsight, I think timing was just the number one issue. The launch was too much of a bottleneck, and just certain things weren't in place that the business really needed, and ultimately cash burn ended the company. And so I think that's absolutely critical. Fitting the business in at the right time with the right amount of cash.
Okay. Do you, since I'm assuming you have investors yourself who are kind of like investing into your programs that then you are investing into the companies, how do you keep them happy, if especially if they are investing in tech that has a several year potential exit to something longer? I mean, you just kind of explained part of it, but how do you, I guess, keep them happy during that longer period when they don't see the returns just yet?
It's just all about expectations.
Okay.
Again, yeah, space is a unique place to invest, and yeah, there's plenty of investors who have their pre-programmed model where they want 10x in 5 years, or whatever it is, or must exit in 3 years. And just bringing the expectation to the fact, again, with timing and cash flow, building the hardware, getting a launch spot, getting enough launch spots to test and be successful, and have paying customers. And it can take longer. It can be a deeper cash burn, and it takes a different kind of investor. It's not for everyone.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, yeah, building the relationship and the expectation up front so that they know what to expect, and that this is a different kind of investment. How do you balance? You mentioned there are several different technologies, autonomous vehicles, and as well as space and others. How do you kind of balance your time between those? Do you decide, okay, now I want to focus on another autonomous vehicle investment, or do you kind of keep watch for what comes along that's the most intriguing or looks like the best opportunity, regardless of which of those your favorite sectors it's in?
Good question. My eyes are always open. I think the number one thing I do all day, every day, is read. And
Okay.
I only invest in companies and industries that excite me, so it never really feels like work. Even if I wasn't invested in any of these, I would still wake up and read about space and autonomous vehicles and robotics, because I just find it thrilling. So I'm just always trying to stay on the edge of what's new, and what companies are doing, and what acquisitions might be in place, and things like that. And I don't necessarily decide one day I want another autonomous vehicle company. I just read and read and read, and invest in what really gets to me.
Okay. That makes it more fun, more interesting, because, like you said, it's not a job. It's something you love doing, and hopefully generates the revenue too.
Right.
What? So the listeners of his podcast, some are leading tech companies, some are launching them, some are team members. But suppose somebody's just getting started, just launching a tech company, whether space tech or something else. What should they consider either before they've launched or if they're just getting started? What should they be looking at? What's the critical thing for them to be looking at from the very beginning?
I've said it before. I think timing is so important, and looking ahead to what's going to be happening in space when my product or service is ready. And say my product's 5 years out. Look, where is space going to be 5 years out when I'm ready to launch or to provide a service? I think timing is so important. Getting into the ecosystem the right way, and the nice thing is using math to decide where launch cost is going to be at that time is helpful, and where's the infrastructure going to be? Because right now that's one of the biggest things lacking in space. There isn't the network of communication yet, but we're not very far, and there isn't the communication of satellite servicing, but we're not very far. So, I think if you can look ahead, and again, that's how I invest as well. I don't look to where autonomous vehicles are today. I look to where they might be 5 years from now. And I think every founder needs to do the same.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely makes sense, especially in something like space. Yeah, 'cause I was talking to somebody the other day and they were talking about a power grid in space or power communication. They said if people could make satellites and not have to have the big solar wings on them and everything for power, that just simplifies it a lot. So yeah, it'd be interesting that, and communication systems and things. So you're kind of in a interesting position. I've asked this of some other investors. So you have funds that you're investing in companies, so you're doing that evaluation. But then, kind of in the opposite direction, you've got people that are kind of investing in you. And how do you handle those two activities, or kind of bring them together? You're in a way, you're kind of, that's not the best term, but kind of a middleman. They kind of in between these, and both sides are relying on your expertise, but kind of in a different way. How does that play out?
So it all comes down to expectations too. Like I said earlier, the investor has to be on the same page as me and as the business itself. Okay. And to be honest, I've taken on far fewer investors with me than I used to in the past. I guess I like to be. I have found a way that works for me. I'm a high risk taker investor, and so I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And if I find people to ride along with me and co-invest, that's wonderful. But I don't change my philosophy for others. I used to. I tried. I went through that, but I really do the best when I do what I know I need to do, and I'm happy to take along people who think like me.
Share the vision, kind of, and okay, that makes sense. Yeah, you want support and alignment, I guess, on kind of both directions, both for your investors and then the companies you're investing in. So I'm sure you see a lot of pitch decks and proposals and things like that. If you've got dozens or hundreds to take a quick review of, and I'm sure it's a really fast initial review, what jumps out at you? What would be in a pitch deck from a potential portfolio company that would grab your attention?
Again, I only invest in what really excites me, and I guess just someone who's looking at a problem in a way that I haven't seen before. Because so many pitch decks are kind of the same. It's one of the, I don't know, they can all be from one of like 10 different styles, and they all show the revenue exploding after a couple of years. And and generally I ignore that. Even the financial forecasts are practically irrelevant to me for a startup. But when I can tell that they're looking at an idea in a unique way or applying a unique service or a product to a problem, I that's when I decide to make a phone call.
Okay. All right. So some kind of a differentiator or a fresh look at something.
A fresh look. That's a
Yeah.
good way to put it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in your role as kind of founder of Formidable Ventures and the work that you do, what's the favorite part? What do you absolutely love about your work or your, let's say activity? Let's not call it work.
Right. Yeah. Again, I'm gonna read about it anyway. I mean, that's what's so great. I love getting into every business, and I want to hear. Yeah, when I talk to space companies, I want to hear about all the problems. I don't. Again, I'm more interested in what's happening behind the scenes than what the forecast is 5 years from now. Like I said, I love seeing people solve problems, and I love seeing technology applied to problems.
Okay. All right. Cool. There are a lot of challenges, both the economy and all tech companies, but from what you see in space tech, some of the companies that you're talking with, what's the biggest challenge that, a space tech startup is facing in today's world?
Boy, so many. Elon famously said space is hard, and
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that just in the last month or so, right? Virgin Orbit filed for bankruptcy. I never would have thought, right? And Bezos still hasn't gotten an orbit, and ULA is for sale. Like, this is one of the only industries I've seen where endless deep pockets still don't guarantee success. And so, I think again, cash flow and burn rate is one of the biggest challenges for sure. Again, just Virgin just famously got their forecast for space tourism wrong year after year after year, and they threw so much money at it. Space is a longer term difficult business, and again, timing. If their customers had been earlier, they'd probably still be doing fine, right? And also, I mean, we've seen so many launches fail. Pretty much every launch company has failures at the beginning, and it just makes you realize you've really got a budget for that. You're going to lose some cargo. You're going to lose some payloads. You're going to lose some spacecraft, and you've got to budget for it and grind your way through it and get to the other side.
Learn from it, and losing a rocket is it's not a small expenditure.
Right.
What I read a lot, and you said you do a lot of reading. I don't know if it's books or other things, but what's a favorite book that you've read recently, fiction or nonfiction, whatever your favorite's been?
Interesting. Personally, I'm very into health, so I read a lot of health books, like from Dave Asprey and people like that. But space wise, I still think Seven Evies is one of the best books I've ever read. Just a very detailed look at what could be happening in the whole space ecosystem 50 to 150 years out. And again, the author actually interviewed some of the people I worked with in the making of that book, and to try to make it as real as possible. So I think that's just fantastic.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that one, so I will add it to my list. I'm always looking for good stuff, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes in case any of the listeners want to find it and learn more about it. So what's ahead for you and your team for, the rest of this year and into next year?
We're full speed ahead on investing. And I always look past the Fed and the Wall Street announcements and all that. And again, I think tech, every industry gets hit during a recession and things like that. But if you zoom out, tech is on an increasing, like a Moore's law applies regardless of any recession. And so yeah, full steam ahead on investing. And then my business is actually bringing to the forefront a supply chain exposure as well. In the past, I've done some consulting for space companies with regards to supply chain, and I'm going to actually relaunch and make a big announcement about my business focusing on the supply chain of space.
Okay, that's interesting. I've talked with several others, and they're talking about how they're prototyping and just getting parts and getting these custom parts for their spacecraft. It used to be 6 months was kind of a long wait time, and now they're being quoted 24, which makes it a little hard to do some design. So yeah, if there's things you can share your experience or expertise on that, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people listening. I've loved talking with you, Don. You got a lot of great experience, great information, and some valuable information there for the listeners, both people starting tech companies and people trying to keep them above, floating, running. So thank you for your time. I know you're busy. If people have questions or they want to learn more about you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Well, thanks for asking. You can always find me on LinkedIn. And then my website is formidable.io. And my email is don@formidable.io. And
Okay.
feel free to contact me.
Okay. And I'll put those links in the show notes as well, so listeners can find you easily.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Right. Well, thanks again. I know you're busy. I appreciate you taking the time to talk and share your wisdom today. And I'll let you go for today.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.